Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I was 40. The wind of the cloud gave me my marriage back in pieces. If you'd asked me 6 months earlier how things were going, I would have said fine. Not in the faintly desperate way people say it when their house is burning and they're guarding the door. I mean the kind of fine that covers 1,000 small routines: trash day on Tuesdays, pancakes on Saturdays, mowing and neat lines so the yard looks like a baseball field. Fine like we knew which cabinets squeaked and which neighbors waved and which grocery store checker slipped dog treats to Daisy when she came along for curbside pickup. I'm an IT guy by trade and temperament. The joke about us is we like things to work. My days were a string of tickets and logins, resetting the world so it behaved for people who had more important things to do. I liked it. I like seeing a line of text where there used to be a red error. I like taking something that looks like static and coaxing it into a song. It's not that I don't know that life is bigger than passwords. I do. I just also believe in the dignity of the fix. Ashley and I bought our place on the edge of town 4 years ago, a builder-grade blank we dressed up like it had a personality. I trimmed the cabinets with shaker fronts, laid a butcher block island I oiled once a month until it gleamed like honey, and ran a cedar fence myself along the back so Daisy could pat-roll the kingdom. The backyard wasn't big, but it was ours: 2 Adirondack chairs, a string of Edison bulbs under the maple, a fire pit I welded from an old drum. I made all those little improvements you don't notice until you go somewhere else and miss them: the drawer that doesn't slam because you added soft close runners, the outlet at the end of the kitchen island where the mixer plugs in just so, the switch by the garage that kills the whole workbench so you can walk away knowing nothing smolders. Ashley liked to joke she'd married a handyman/help desk. She'd come home and set her purse down and touch the new thing I'd put up, a shelf, a hook, and say, "Look at my engineer," even though I'm not an engineer. It felt good. I spent the first year after we moved in trying to make the house look like her Pinterest board and the second year trying to keep up. Somewhere in there, life became a collection of appointments. Her dad had a hip replacement and then a scare with his blood pressure, so I took time off to drive him to follow-ups and sat in waiting rooms with old Sports Illustrateds and coffee that tasted like despair. Ashley's mom sent texts with hearts and thank yous in the middle of the night: "You're a good one, Nate." I saved them without meaning to, the way you keep a stub from a game you didn't know would matter someday. Ashley worked at a marketing agency that did real estate videos and local brewery campaigns and whatever else paid. She was good at her job in a way I admire because I don't have it. She could walk into a room of people with strong opinions and make them feel like she was agreeing with them even while she moved them somewhere better. She had a way with light, too: how it should hit a countertop, how a shadow made a canned drink look expensive. She'd show me drafts on her phone at night and I'd lean against the island and watch and say, "Looks clean," because that's what she liked to hear, and then I'd load the dishwasher in the arrangement that got it all dry with the fewest water spots. If you're looking for the exact day things soured, I can't give it to you. We didn't have a big fight. We had a series of small silences. She'd spend a little longer at the office. I'd stay late to finish a ticket no one needed after hours. She started going to a Thursday trivia night with coworkers at a downtown bar with concrete floors and ferns. I started staying home with Daisy and learning to make ribs that didn't fight back. On Fridays, we were tired. On Saturdays, we ran errands and saw her folks. On Sundays, I mowed. There were hints. There always are. A lock screen turned over quicker than usual. A perfume I didn't buy. A laugh that lived at a pitch I couldn't reach. But we've always been taught in this country to be polite with our suspicions, to give grace even when it's a door someone's sneaking out. And I liked being a person who trusted his wife. It felt like part of how I understood myself: I'm competent, kind, and not the guy who snoops. So when my phone asked, one night, if I wanted to extend our family storage plan because we were out of space, I said yes. And when I bought a new tablet the next week because mine was as slow as church and had a crack across the corner, I unboxed it with the precise pleasure of a man who loves both cardboard and clean starts and signed into the family account like I've done 100 times. If you've never watched a blank screen fill itself, you might not know the thrill. Little gray squares turned into photos one by one, a parade of our life, from road trip sunsets to Daisy's wet nose pressed against the lens. Then there were videos. Little thumbnails with play buttons. I didn't think much. I chose one labeled IMG 6234 because I had 15 minutes before a Zoom and the house was quiet, and it's always fun to let the past choose you at random. The video was the interior of a hotel room. It started with black fabric, the camera must have been under a coat or something. Then it lifted and there was a bed no one had slept in yet, and a mirror that was too big for the wall, and a chair draped with someone's jacket. You develop an instinct for your own house, your own furniture. That instinct also knows what is not yours. This wasn't ours, this bland art, this mantelpiece where no one's family photos would ever go. Then Ashley's voice, close to the mic. "Does this angle work?" she said, like she was testing a shot. A man's voice, lower than mine, with a laugh in it I recognized from too many commercials, said, "It's perfect. We're perfect." The camera settled on the dresser, half pointing at the bed, and they came into frame in that inner circle way two people have when the world's not invited. I didn't watch more than a few seconds. I didn't need to. I didn't want to. I felt heat rise into my face and pool in my ears, the way it does when you get off a treadmill too fast. I closed the cover of the tablet like it was a door and put my hands on either side of it like I could keep whatever was inside from getting out. In the kitchen, the fridge motor kicked on. Daisy, asleep under the table, thumped her tail once without waking. Outside, a delivery truck idled. The whole world continued with its courtesy, the way it does when you're being remade and no one has sent out a notice. I'm not proud of the next 30 minutes, or maybe I am, depending on which friend is asking. I opened the tablet again. I scrolled. There were messages I hadn't meant to see, two people working very hard to convince each other they were unbound by anything old or ordinary. There were more videos, some of them short, some longer, all of them recorded without the sort of care for what comes next that I had built our kitchen with. There were hotel selfies with towels around wet hair, and a shot of a parking garage I recognized 3 blocks from her office. There was a timestamp the same night I'd been at her parents' house fixing the light over their sink while her dad told me about the Chiefs and her mom wrapped leftovers for me and said, "You take this, she won't eat it." I didn't throw the tablet. I didn't break a glass. I didn't text the number I could have texted and write the sentences men write when they want to win a moment they've already lost. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinets and put my head in my hands and breathed for a while in those shallow, not useful breaths that only make your chest hurt, and then I got up and washed my face in the sink like a man in a movie and dried it on the dish towel that says home is a verb, which I bought as a joke and Ashley hated because she said verbs don't hang over sinks. I didn't tell her that night. I made dinner. I watched an episode of a show where everyone has nicer furniture than us and bigger problems. When she came home late and full of the practiced brightness of someone who's been telling a story all night and is tired of it, I asked how her day was. She said, "Wild," the way she does when she wants me to ask for the wild, and I did, and she told me about a client who wanted a video of a house that made people cry and also want to refinance and buy a dog, and we both laughed in that way couples do when they're naming something else. Then we went to bed. Daisy got up once to drink water. Ashley's alarm went off at 6 and she snoozed it twice. I had a plan by morning. That's who I am. I don't recommend it as a universal policy. Sometimes people need to throw a lamp. My plan was simple. We were due at her parents' house that Sunday for dinner, pot roast, the house smelling like the sort of comfort you can't package. I texted her mom that I'd bring my new tablet to show photos from our Montana trip because she'd asked to see them a dozen times and I'd kept forgetting. I put the tablet in my backpack with the HDMI adapter I keep for troubleshooting conference rooms. I added an extra cable. Then I went to work and wrote tickets and reset passwords and told the guy for the 4th time that the printer wasn't out to get him, paper just has grain. If you're reading this and thinking I wanted revenge, you're not wrong. But you're also not right in the way a movie would be. I wanted the truth in the light. I wanted to stop being the only person in the room holding something heavy. Ashley respects her parents. She loves her dad in the clear-eyed way daughters have with men who never missed a game. She calls her mom every other day to overanalyze a thing someone said in a meeting. She could defend herself to me. She would posture. But her mother? In their kitchen? With the pot roast steaming and the TV waiting for my slideshow? I wanted her to have to look at the line where her choices met their names. We got there at 5. Her dad, Ken, was on the couch with the game on mute. Her mom, Rita, came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel and hugged us both like she hadn't seen us in years instead of last week. The house smelled like childhood and Sundays and a kind of safety the world can't offer you after a certain age unless you make it yourself. Ashley looked tired. I thought she was beautiful. I also thought I didn't know her. Both things were true. We made small talk. Ken asked me about a chirp in his truck. I told him it was probably a bell. Ashley helped her mom put rolls in a basket. I pulled the HDMI cable from my backpack and said, "You wanted to see Montana?" Rita clapped and said, "Finally," in the exact tone of a woman who has been patient and wants credit for it. I plugged the cable in the back of the TV. Ashley glanced over and said, "Oh, good, show them the northern lights." Her voice didn't wobble. Maybe that's my memory gilding itself, but I remember thinking how brave we all are when the floor gives way. The tablet mirrored to the screen. The living room filled with our faces. Daisy at the lake. Me on a rock making a face I thought looked cool and Ashley said looked like I had to pee. The obvious next swipe would have been the mountains. I didn't swipe. I went to the Photos app and selected albums, then videos, then, without a speech or a look at anyone, I tapped a thumbnail I'd chosen that afternoon by the work coffee machine while people debated football like doctrine. The hotel room appeared. The bed. The mirror. That art. Ashley said no before the audio came in, just a syllable, just a tiny plea, and then everything was so loud. Rita stood up fast enough to push her chair back into the hutch. Ken said, "What am I looking at?" The way a father says it when he already knows and is begging for a way not to. The man's laugh filled their living room. Ashley moved toward me and then away and then toward the TV like she could physically pull the image back into the glass. I didn't let it run. I'm not a monster. I paused it when the two of them walked into the frame, before it became what it would become. My hand shook and the pause icon jumped. No one sat down. Rita put her hand over her mouth and said, "Into it, you did not." She turned to her daughter. "Ashley?" It wasn't angry. It was the kind of heartbreak that makes you polite because you have been practicing politeness your whole life. "I'm sorry," Ashley said, "but I have to tell you," she said it to me first. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's my hurt arranging itself into a sentence that makes me less disposable. But that's how I remember it. "Nate, I'm..." Rita cut her off, and I had never seen her interrupt her daughter before. "Don't you Nate him," she said. "You look at your father." Ken had not moved. He stared at the screen as if it were a test pattern. "We fed you," he said, "and it wasn't the thing I expected. We taught you to clean up your messes. You don't make a mess like this." He rubbed his jaw like it hurt him and then, finally, looked at me. "Son," he said, and I flinched at the word, "I am so sorry." Ashley started to cry then, in earnest. She has a pretty cry, it's one of those unfair things some people get. She reached for her mother's hand. Rita did not give it. "You did this," she said, quietly. "You did this to yourself, to him, to us. You set your house on fire and asked the neighbors to hold the hose while you watched it burn." Ashley said, it's not what you think," out of muscle memory, and then she laughed once, one small, bitter syllable, because of course it was exactly what we thought. She sat down. No one else did. I unplugged the cable. The TV went to a screensaver of mountains I had not climbed. The room made those little noises houses make when the weather changes, wood adjusting, vents sighing. Daisy, bless her, dropped a tennis ball at Ken's feet like this might fix it. He picked it up and put it on the table like a relic. Dinner was cold. We ate it anyway because that's what you do when you've made a pot roast. You don't throw away 6 hours of your life just because the last 10 minutes surprised you. There's a generosity inside regular routines I didn't understand until that night. We passed rolls. We asked for salt. Ashley cried in a neat, continuous way that made me want to fetch her a glass of water and also leave the planet. Rita's eyes were red but she didn't dab them. Ken chewed like he was conducting a test. I tried to make my fork act like a person's. When it was over, Rita stood and said, "I can't make this okay for you," to Ashley. "I won't try. I love you, and I won't help you lie." She pointed at me, which is impolite and in that moment felt like love, has been our son since the day he carried your father in from the truck without making him feel like a burden. You don't get to make me choose and like the outcome." Ashley said, "Mom," and reached. Rita stepped back. "You did this," she said again. It wasn't cruel. It was the line under a column of numbers. We left without dessert. In the driveway, Ashley grabbed my arm. "We can talk," she said. "Not like that. Not with them. Not like," she swallowed. "Please." I didn't move away. Old habits, I guess. "How long?" I asked, because it's built into the script. "A few months," she said. She searched for the right lie and found the truest one. It was exciting. "His name?" I said. She told me. I knew him by face. He'd been in a photo once, a group shot from her office. He had that middle manager attractiveness that looks like confidence to cameras. I nodded, because what else do you do with a name at the edge of a story? "I'm sorry," she said, and I didn't tell her she had said it already, because people aren't word processors, they don't keep track, and sorry is one of those words you have to say until it either changes shape or stops meaning anything. "You're a good man," she said next, and I had never known I could hate a sentence more than I did then. I wanted to be a specific man. Husband. Not a good man in the abstract, not a piece of furniture anyone could put in their house and say, "Doesn't it look nice?" I went home. She didn't. I don't know where she went. Hotel. Friend. The office. I sat on our couch and the tablet stared at me from where I'd dropped it on the coffee table, and I turned it face down like you do with a photograph you're not ready to put away. Daisy took my wrist in her mouth and squeezed with just enough pressure to feel like a pulse and then put her head in my lap. I put a hand on her head and said, "To the room, okay?" It didn't change the air. It changed the part of me that needed a word. Divorce, for us, wasn't spectacular. We didn't throw plates. We filled out forms. We argued like adults over items that did not deserve the heat of our voices because he'd had to go somewhere. She kept her car. I kept the truck. She moved into a smaller place with terrible parking. I stayed in the house because the mortgage was more comfortable than starting over and because the fence line looked like a promise I wanted to keep to the dog. Her parents called me every other day for a while to check on me and then every week when they realized I was going to survive. Rita brought over soup and left it on the porch like a weird courtship. Ken came by and we replaced the belt on his truck and didn't talk about anything that mattered. He did, at one point, hand me a folded piece of paper with a phone number on it. "My lawyer," he said. "He's quiet." I called. The man was quiet. He filed things that needed filing and didn't offer me advice about my soul. That's good. I have friends for that. Ashley sent texts, then emails, then a letter. I read them all. I didn't respond to most of them. We had one phone call that lasted 17 minutes and contained more silence than speech, which I count as a success. She wanted to explain that it wasn't about me, and I believed her and also didn't, and both beliefs coexisted like two tabs in a browser. She wanted me to know she felt shame. I told her that's not a currency. She asked if we could keep Daisy, like custody, alternate weeks. I said no. She didn't push. I respect that. Sometimes love is knowing which war not to start. If there's a scene where I burned the videos to a thumb drive and mailed them to the guy, you won't find it here. If there's a scene where I posted a thread on a forum and the internet rallied with righteous cruelty, it didn't happen. I showed the truth to the people who needed it. That felt like enough. I deleted what I could, which is to say I deleted it where I could see it. The cloud is forever if you want it to be and sometimes even if you don't. I took the tablet off the family plan because I couldn't stand the idea of waking up to a phone ding that was a past I didn't live in anymore. I replaced the master bedroom paint. That sounds small. It wasn't. We had a gray that looked good on Instagram and bad at 11 p.m. When you're trying to figure out what your life is for. I chose a warm white and rolled it on in long, steady arcs while a podcast about guitars played and made no new claims on my heart. I built a new headboard out of oak and learned how to mortise a joint in a way that would make my high school shop teacher nod. I slept better. Daisy snored like a small engine. I told my parents. They live 2 states away in a town that has both less and more going on than you guess. My mom cried and asked if I was eating. My dad asked if I needed him to come out and help with anything and then, in the tone that has always made me feel tense and safe, said, "You did right." I don't know if I did. I know I did what I could do. Therapy, which I had previously filed under things for other people, became a standing appointment. I sat on a couch that probably cost more than my first car and told a woman with excellent shoes about the parts of my life I didn't know how to hold. She talked less than I expected, and when she did, it was to ask small questions that opened like trapdoors. "What did you want your showing to do?" She asked about the video. I wanted a witness, I told her. I wanted not to be crazy. I wanted her parents to understand that the version of me in their heads, good son-in-law, the guy who shows up, had been faithful to their daughter in ways their daughter had not been faithful to me, and I needed them to use the right words. She nodded. And now? Now I wanted to like the sound of my own footsteps in my house. Now I wanted to cook dinner without imagining ghosts at the island. Now I wanted to make a life that wasn't a reaction to a hurt. I started running again. I am not fast, and I am not built like people who enjoy sports. I look like a man who knows where the extension cords live. But there's a thing that happens in the third mile where your body forgives you for the first two and lets you be a machine for a while. I liked that. I liked sweating for a reason other than panic. I liked coming home and standing on the back step with my hands on my hips and letting the cold air make its agreement with my lungs. In the spring, I replaced the old workbench outlets with new ones and installed a sub-panel so I could run a real dust collector for the shop. I made a dining table for a friend who got engaged and a planter box for Rita because she wanted basil out back and Ken kept killing it by watering it like a lawn. Ashley stopped by once when I wasn't home to pick up a coat she'd left in a closet and left a note on the counter that said, simply, "Thank you." I left it there for a week and then put it in the drawer with the warranties. If you need a romantic ending, I can't give it to you yet. I had coffee with someone from my running group who smiles with her whole face and asked me about routers with genuine curiosity. We laughed easy. I'm not ready to say anything else about it, even to myself. I like that I can feel the possibility without needing to drag it into the light and name it. I do have one more scene to offer, and you can decide for yourself if it counts as an ending. On a Sunday in May, I grilled in the backyard. The maple had leafed out that particular green that looks edible. Daisy patrolled the fence for squirrels that did not care. The Edison bulbs hadn't blown over winter. Rita and Ken came over with a bowl of potato salad and a container of brownies she said were for the road and then left on my counter because she knows I won't send her home with her own Tupperware. We ate and talked about the sort of things people talk about when they're being kind to themselves: gardens, the neighbor's new RV, how the Royals will break your heart if you let them. At some point, Rita put her fork down and said, "We're proud of you." I laughed because that's a sentence you give a 9-year-old when he plays a piano recital and doesn't cry. She frowned at me. "I mean it," she said. "You did right by our family. I don't mean the way you showed us the thing, though I'm glad you did. I mean the way you carry yourself. You didn't make us choose cruelty. You let us choose the truth." She reached across the table and squeezed my arm the way mothers do when they don't know where to put the rest of their love. "You're our son." Ken lifted his beer like a toast and then, because he's Ken, added, "And that sub-panel is clean work." We all laughed and it felt like breathing after holding your breath underwater for a long time. That night, after they left, I sat in one of the Adirondack chairs under the string lights and opened the tablet. It had been in a drawer. I signed in. I went to Settings, to Accounts, to Family, and I removed what needed removing. I changed passwords. I turned off auto backup. I set the photos to local only, a small act of rebellion in a world that insists we press everything we are into the cloud. I scrolled through the Montana pictures, the sky too big to fit, the way Ashley's hair got wild in the wind, the way Daisy barked at a lake like it was lying to her, and I let them be what they were. Then I closed the cover and set the tablet on the table and sat back and watched the lights sway in the evening's small breeze. The house hummed in the way a good house does when it's holding a life. I'm not naive. People are complicated, I am not the hero in every version of this story. But I know this: I built a kitchen that works. I learned how to mortise a joint. I showed the truth to the people whose names were on the door. I kept the dog. I said okay to a room and it echoed back something like agreement. And in the morning, when the sun hits the butcher block and makes it look like honey, I make coffee, and Daisy thumps her tail once, and the day starts, and there's a steadiness in it that feels like a promise I can keep. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the iCloud Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.